Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is another Black Tech Talk. I'm here with my guest, Nagone 11, IT recruiter out of New York. What's going on, Nagone?
Hey, how you doing, Mike?
Good, brother. Good. Um, the industry is starting to rebound after COVID. There's been some layoffs in some companies, some organizations, but then now you have rehiring for different sorts of markets that are coming on board to the tech sector. From an IT recruiter's perspective, how long have you been in the recruiting game for?
I've been in the recruiting game since 2002, so I've been in it about a good 22 years or so. Been in it, I have a lot of experience, seen a lot going on, and I've seen the industry, go through its changes from how things were kind of moving from the 90s into the early 2000s and moving up to where we have right now. Seems a very interesting change, but one thing I have seen is the industry grow very, very, very serious, very, 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 I would say, aggressively. From the time I've gotten into it and to where it is now, it's grown a great deal.
And what do you think are the industries that are, hot right now in 2024 in terms of recruiting?
The industry's manufacturing, certainly. Manufacturing has really grown a great deal. It's grown a lot. Certainly, we look at certain areas that I would say are still very strong, that we have a lot of demand in. Certainly, the financial services industry, financial industry as well. You are dealing with, it was a small drop in the tech sector with tech companies, but that is starting to begin to ramp up again. We are seeing, from the technical side, a tremendous amount of demand in the healthcare sector, and kind of all areas of healthcare, really. So we've seen that. Literally, if you want to kind of put the pharmaceutical industry into that, if you want to kind of merge that with healthcare, which they kind of run side by side a bit, we see that as well. But we are seeing a tremendous amount of demand also in the healthcare industry, which is growing quite aggressively.
So are those areas focused on IT, or are they outside of the IT sector?
No, they're focusing a lot on IT, a lot of IT inside of those areas, from all kinds of database demands, a lot of IT infrastructure. You're dealing with large amounts of information. Big demand inside of the healthcare sector. Big demand from an IT perspective. And one thing I'll say about the health sector, they are a little bit, from hospitals and so forth. They were, from a technical standpoint, I think they were a little bit behind, but they've really been looking to catch up aggressively over the last, I would say, over the last 10 years, and they really are looking to ramp up a lot more seriously now. So that's what I'm seeing a lot of, and that's what we're seeing a lot of demand starting to come in as well.
What kind of skill sets are they, are in demand right now for those sectors?
If you're looking at a lot of, from the technical standpoint, you're looking at a lot of development work, a lot of IT developers. You're looking at a lot of people, database administrators, very, very strong there as well. You're looking at a tremendous demand also from a lot of architecture people, setting up architecture, and people doing a lot of systems. How would I say? You're changing a lot of systems and migrating to a lot of different technical systems currently.
Sysadmins
for sure.
Okay.
Definitely cybersecurity as well. I'm sure you have some awareness of that, but cybersecurity for sure. And we are also, and I would say looking at it from a standpoint of networking as well. But definitely systems architecture playing a very serious role there, because a lot of companies are rolling out a lot of new technology, and they really need a lot of very strong system architects to really help a lot of these systems up, move them, certainly get them in, and then getting a lot of different technologies communicating with each other that they classically didn't really have before. So we're seeing some big moves there. So that's what we're seeing a lot of.
Now, in those roles, do you think that college is still a deal breaker, or is college still in demand? Like, what's the role of post secondary education in these sort of industries and these roles?
Good question. Depending on the role that you're in, college is playing, in some respects, a little less of a role in some roles, but other roles you're not really going to be able to get past a lot of that. So if you're on a higher level role, if you're certainly in the role of a systems architect, you're getting in any levels of system architecture and so forth. You're going to have to have a degree. If you're getting more into a chief technical role and you're playing or a chief architecture role, you're going to have to be college educated, because there's going to be a lot of computing concepts and so forth that you're going to have a good idea of. That's going to deal with classical, really computing that you're going to have to learn at a university level to really understand how those systems and really not only work, but you can integrate with other systems. You really have to be you have to have a good education as far as that is concerned, to be educated from a computer science degree level to really handle a lot of this competently. There'll be those who say you don't necessarily have to have that, but I don't see anyone who's at that level who doesn't. So those areas you're going to need. Some of the small levels, if you're going to be, or let's say lesser, when I say lesser levels, I'm not saying so much that you're a lesser technologist, but you may not have such a heavy demand for a college education when we're looking at someone who may be doing development and some levels of if you're a systems administrator or so forth. Some of those roles you don't necessarily have to have a degree to actually do well. In fact, you can learn a lot of this quite well if you have gotten good certification and have trained in these areas. You can actually do these roles pretty well without a degree, and a lot of these companies kind of know that and understand that. So the degree is not as necessary. A lot of companies would like to see that you have it, but if you do not have a degree, in many respects, they also would like to see a good amount of experience. Mm-hmm. But degrees are not as seriously demanded as I think that they were in the past. But there's, depending on the companies you're going into, they are desired. They're desired to have. But are they absolutely necessary? No. And at certain levels, you can certainly get in. At certain levels in the IT industry, and do very well without having a degree. But when you get to the higher levels, as I said, when you start getting to the CTO level, you start getting to the chief architect level, and so forth, you're going to have a computer science background.
Okay. Do you think that certifications can make up for the lack of a degree?
Yes.
When you're going through resumes and you're trying to match up, resume to prospects, roles that's coming down the pike, do you think that certification could, kind of balance out the lack of degree in that area?
Yes, absolutely. So when you're looking at if someone has, let's say we're looking for someone who is a Python developer. We're looking for somebody who's got some good Python development skills. Certainly someone who's certified in Python, has done some programming there, has worked on some projects where they have some good Python development skills, and you can show that, and you can test well on a technical test if somebody's going to ask you technical questions of how to program in Python. Yeah. If you don't have a degree, but yet you have that certification and you've gone through those programs, through some of those certification courses, and some of them are very, very, very good to get in on the ground floor and start to learn and actually get some good experience, and then be able to move higher and higher and higher up with more responsibility, and be that much more of a competent developer. Absolutely, that can work for you quite well. And you do not have to have a degree to be a good, let's say, Python developer or a good Java developer, or however. You can certainly get certification to help you become very competent in these areas. That is for sure.
Moving on, have you seen salaries increase or remain flat for 2024 in regards to the recruitment aspect?
What I've seen is salaries have actually stayed pretty steady. Some salaries are moving up a little bit, but they're steady. They're not going down. Salaries are not definitely going down, but salaries are pretty much staying steady. We are looking at definitely, a lot of jobs out there. Tech sector, as I said, is moving a little bit slower, but it's in some other areas of manufacturing and so forth, healthcare and so forth. There are a lot of opportunities there that are growing. So you do have opportunity to do well, to make some very good dollars there. But I'd say the dollars are staying steady. Some are growing a little bit, but they're not, markedly expanding as I had seen, where I saw salaries really make some stronger increases maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, where things were really kind of gapping up a little bit more. But here we're looking at things kind of staying steady and maybe moving a little bit, but relatively steady at this stage. But definitely not going down. Definitely not decreasing.
Is that at the top end or at the lower end?
I would say that's definitely at the top end. Lower end, I think salaries are still where they are. They have not gone down. I have not seen and a lot of what we're seeing in the industry, there's not a huge decrease at all in salaries. And that's across the board. Entry level people coming in, salaries are a little bit lower for people who are coming in at entry level, but they are also, you have an opportunity to increase your dollars relatively quickly. When you do get in 2-3 years down the line, you can make some fairly nice increases. So that would be my outlook on what's going on as far as the salary is concerned. If you follow me, or hopefully I've answered your question.
No, it makes a lot of sense. Because salaries can be tied into location, be tied into remote work, on-site, hybrid. These sort of give and takes, can actually determine the salary. So I'm trying to understand if that sort of thing can justify an increase in salary or a decrease in salary, especially with returning back to the office versus some folks who are going to be permanently.
I was going to get into that. Mm-hmm. When we start to look at salaries as far as people who remote work, and now there's a lot more demand for people to come back into the office. A lot more demand for people to come back into the office today. So the remote work is starting to kind of move back a little bit, because a lot of companies they're just demanding people to be in just because of the brick and mortar. They have these huge offices and they want them to be occupied and so forth. So there's an expense there for people to actually that they want to incentivize people to come into the office. So that is starting to return, and they are paying people pretty decently to come back into the office. Not massively, not these massive bonuses to come back into the office, but some people are getting incentivized to come back in. But a lot of companies are making demands for people to come back in as well. So that's where we're kind of seeing things, and it is give and take depending on where you are. So it's a little bit on the complex side. There is a certain remote component now to work that I believe is permanent. That's my belief. That some of that is going to be permanent. But companies are definitely pushing a lot more to bring people back into the office. So they are giving some incentives and some people are getting bonused a bit for that. But it does reflect on salaries a bit. That's why I say it's a little bit, but it's not out of control or out of control like things were. Let's say, just a couple of years ago when we were in the pandemic, and when people were really getting bonus to come into the office, if offices were in fact being open. So like they were doing with Microsoft as well as Meta as well, was doing that because I had gotten hired by Meta for a contract as well. They were incentivizing you nicely to come into the office and in the city. So that has been cut back a lot. If that answers the question as well.
No, definitely. Moving on, did the Supreme Court decision on affirmative action and anti-DEI legislation impact recruiting for you in your office?
Well, in my office, things have not, DEI, it hasn't really had a huge impact as of yet, but I do believe, quite frankly, in the overall, it is going to have an effect and it's going to be negative for us. That's my overall view of what, if you're going to ask me what my belief would be, I believe that would be a problem. So I do believe that it's going to affect us more negatively as time goes on than positively. We are seeing some areas, because we already know that some companies are not really hiring a lot of black people currently in the IT industry. We do know by the numbers that, let's say just in Silicon Valley, just looking at that area where hiring for black professionals or black IT people has been kind of weak, and I believe we're going to see that even weaken more because of DEI. So I generally look at this as being negative. Now, in my office, we have not seen much of that as of yet, but I do suspect as time goes on, we will see some more negative, more of a negative impact. There are not a lot of people like myself, or more people like myself, who are in positions to help to bring a lot of people in, where we need to have more of us who can hire more African American people, men especially. I'm in a position where I can help that, but we have lesser of people like myself coming in, I do believe. Mm-hmm. So I do think that this overall is going to have a net negative effect. I believe it will be net negative, but it's not going to destroy us in the industry, because if you do have good technical skills, a good technical background, you will certainly work. But it's depending on where you'll work and what type of companies you'll have an opportunity to work with is what's going to happen. Some companies are going to be harder to get into. So that's my overall general. I think I do believe we're going to be looking at things in a net negative light. At my company currently, we have not seen that going on as of yet, but I do anticipate more of this coming up in the future. I'm sorry, but that's for sure.
Well, as it stands right now, Black Americans make up less than 10% of the IT industry. So if affirmative action, anti-DEI legislation, and affirmative action decision at the Supreme Court level is going to have an impact, what is your guesstimation as to how much of an impact would it be? Bring it down to, it's less than 10% now. What is your guesstimation in terms of percentage-wise?
I say that's going to affect us if we're at say 8 or 9% now. We're going to be looking at probably going down to 6 to 7, maybe a little bit below that. But we're because that's going to have an effect on us, because just some people are just not going to want to see you in there. Though there's going to be technical demand and technical skill set. So your skill set will do a lot of talking for you, but you are going to there's going to be a negative impact to reduce the numbers of us in there. We're going to see that. So we're definitely going to see a negative impact, Mike. I'm just, I'm I'm not very positive on saying that, but we've seen where Meta, we've seen, which is Facebook, and these companies were rather thin on hiring black people. There, I was one of the few who were hired, and I think we're going to see less of that come through in Facebook or at Microsoft. Companies like this, we're definitely going to see less, and people are going to say, yeah, these are affirmative action hires. They're going to try to say that like you're less qualified as a reason for keeping you out when you are certainly going to be qualified and as equally as qualified as anyone else coming in, but they'll be running that affirmative action hire and all that kind of thing.
But can they really run that though? Because if the Supreme Court's making this decision on affirmative action at the college level, at the university level, and starting to see maybe some of that trickle down to the organizational level, enterprise level, can they really make the claim that you're affirmative action hire if affirmative action is going away?
Oh no, they can't make it. They really are not going to be able to say that because affirmative action will say, well, it's gone, but they will be saying that or doing that just because they don't want to see a certain number of you in there. And I've seen that happen. Even with my own company, I've seen where that has happened, where I had to actually hire somebody back for somebody who was actually reduced from my team, who was a black person. I think I might have let you know about that situation, but yeah, we saw a situation like that happen. That was last year, but yeah, I saw some crazy things go on, and if I wasn't there, that person would be gone. So the question you ask is a great one. And can they say that? And can they justify? It's a question about can they justify that? I would say under how a lot of companies tend to work and not hire a lot of us. Yeah, we will see that one. Yes, we will. Yes, absolutely. And the numbers have shown it. What's our situation in Silicon Valley? Why are so few of us being hired there? Why is that? I'm not asking you directly, but I'm saying, why is that number, being even further reduced? Are there just less of us? We have people certainly who look at the Valley as just like other technology people and want to be there and want to be engaged. And we're finding the doors not as open. And even though many try to deny this is what in fact we're seeing. So, how is that justified? These are questions we all have to ask. And some of our brightest and sharpest people that we do have in the in any profession are certainly in the in the technology industry. That is for sure. A lot of sharp, young, and even older, black technologists who are setting records, and we're finding difficulty.
When George Floyd was killed in 2020, you had a lot of organizations talking about bringing on more black candidates and making these sort of DEI commitments. Have you seen anything materialize since 2020 in regards to recruiting black candidates specifically?
I've seen companies say they've had initiatives to bring on more minority candidates, more minorities that have greater diversification, where they're talking about having Latinx and more African Americans and more women and so forth. So they lump you, so we get lumped into a rather sizable group of these folks who want to be considered, how would I say, diverse. So when I look at it from that perspective, people can say that they're doing initiatives to bring in different people. You see them bringing in more women. We see them bringing in a lot more black people and really extending their black technical force. No, we're not seeing that on a wholesale level.
So you don't think that they've made any strides at all in terms of from an IT recruitment perspective, where they're now going on LinkedIn or maybe going on Indeed, some of these other even Facebook, name your social media platform, to say, I like this person just as much as this other candidate, but I'm going to put this person from a ranked choice perspective at the top as a consideration. You don't think that's a strategy that's been implemented?
I think it's from a ranked choice. You're saying from a standpoint of race.
I think from the George Floyd, commitments that were made by many organizations, to recruit black candidates. I'm thinking from a ranked choice perspective that if you're an IT recruiter, is there a strategy to say, I have a black candidate, I have a white candidate, and I have an Indian candidate, for that matter, Southeast Asia, and then I say from a recruitment standpoint, does that black candidate resume get sent to the top when you're sending out to clients?
Does that resume get sent out to the top and it gets sent to clients? From what I'm seeing and looking at just the overall numbers that we're looking at as far as black people in tech getting hired at a higher level, no, we're not seeing that. So I would have to say no.
Wow.
And I'm being very, very, very frank about it. Now, there may be those who may try to come out and say differently, but if they're going to show a lot of different numbers or a lot of different metrics to show where this is changing massively, I would like to see it. But no, we're not seeing that.
Okay.
Now I know you're in the tech side, and I know you're asking some very good questions. But have you witnessed this as well? I have not seen much of this, and I'm in New York City, and I'm in one of the certainly hotter areas where I see people doing a little bit better is on the healthcare side, and not necessarily from a IT perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So you do have people who definitely are getting more in the IT perspective there. But I don't see, just literally from a technology perspective, a hell of a lot more of us getting hired at much higher rates, of which I would very much like to see.
Mm-hmm.
So, can we push companies to do a better job? Absolutely. The companies know that.
Well, here's what I see, and I'm in a very unique role in the fintech sector, the finance investment sector. Help desk, client side services, completely dominated by Black and Latinos.
Yeah.
Before that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
Networking side, we definitely start to see more Asians, Southeast Asians, Indians, Pakistanis, Black folks are starting to emerge in that area. From a cybersecurity perspective, more recruiting of Blacks and Latinos than before. But the numbers, industry-wise, the number has not changed. So 3.3%, 3.5% of Black people make up 3.5%, roughly 3.5% of the cybersecurity industry. That number has not necessarily changed all that much. And so I think some organizations have made some decisions to bring on more Black candidates, but that has not increased the overarching number of, from a percentage-wise, in the industry at all. I think that number has been flat. But that's my perspective. I think that from an IT recruiter perspective, I would think that they keep some kind of metrics, right?
We keep metrics, and we look certainly to bring in a lot more. When we look at certainly people from, like you said, the help desk perspective, yes, we see more. We see more there. But when we start looking at the areas of I'm not even going to just go into project management, but areas of systems architecture, admins, very senior developers I would, I'm also looking at. But when I really start to look at architects, and senior engineers, as far as the percentage of more blacks and others, or more blacks, especially if I'm looking at black people, when I'm not seeing a large number or greater increase. We're looking to bring more people in because every black person that I see that comes across my desk is going straight up, and I'm not seeing the numbers coming through as well either. So I would like to see more numbers coming through. But a lot of us are not getting into these large banking institutions at some high levels, or some of the higher level consultancies, where I think we should be in greater numbers. A lot of us are not there. Maybe we're not applying as much, and certainly people are going through LinkedIn and these other areas and really pulling a lot of people from there to get them. But the numbers are not coming through heavily. They're not coming through heavily now, and I'm definitely not seeing an increase at some of the senior level positions that we are certainly going for now. I'm definitely not seeing it, and this is over the last 2 to 3 years. No, I have not.
Okay. What are some of the resume do's and don'ts for black candidates who are applying for roles from a contract perspective? Is there something that is keeping candidates from advancing to that second round, or even getting to that first round for that matter, on their resume?
Well, I think first of all, one of the biggest issues is you have to have your resume written properly. All right, and that's one of the very important things that people have to have, is to understand kind of how to write a proper resume, and that's something that I see us not as strong on as we should, and we'll talk with people about that. But you definitely want to have your resumes really well situated for where you're actually trying to go. You have to, number one, really know your audience. You have to write your resume. If you're looking for a specific position, if you're looking to be, let's say, help desk, or if you're going to be a developer, or you're going to be an architect or something. I mean, they tend to, when people get at a slightly higher level, they understand how to write resumes a little bit better. Some don't, but really, you have to really always write your resume with a specific recipient in mind. Okay, you have to really understand the information that's going to be relevant to the position that you're really applying for, and have really the kind of the specific skills and some of the keywords that are going to be important to have in there. And some people just don't have that. So I understand many people don't have resume writing skills, or some have not really gone on about that. But you have to really understand who you're applying to, know your audience. Very, 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 very important. Here, let me take a look. I'm looking at a couple of resumes right now. It's kind of interesting. Yeah. Also have to, resume writing with a lot of people. They don't know. They write all over the place, and they don't keep their resumes concise, Mike. You have to have your resume concise. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that some people are told they get multiple opinions, and so different opinions going to have different structures, different sorts of font, different sorts of bullet points, multiple pages, cover letters. I'm just saying that there's a myriad of different perspectives that are saying, hey, your resume looks good, or your resume doesn't look good, and then people are changing up things before you, like you said, it looks like a mess. I think that for a lot of black men, I think their resume may be one of those key factors that might be keeping them out rather than bringing them in.
It has a factor. Some people try to write and put everything they have on it, what they've done, and too many people are all over the place, especially brothers. Well, I've done this, and then they bring a lot of other stuff in that's not that may not be relevant. That's people who are kind of coming in and who are kind of new into the business, and they put a lot of different stuff in there that is just not. It's all over the place. Because one thing you have to say, if somebody's going to take a look at your resume, you're going to bring it into a recruiter or somebody who's in a project management role, myself, who's going to look at this, and we're going to make a quick decision. You're not going to. You don't want to have everything all over. People aren't going to have a lot of time to read over a book. So, you only have a brief period to kind of capture, hiring manager's attention. So you have to keep things concise. You have to keep things with respect to relevant, professional experience and skills. If you're new in there, you're not going to have a lot of that. If you're a little bit more experience, you're gonna have to have a little bit more of that. So you're gonna have to, keep, ensure to keep things to the point, and the elements, that you have to include. Do not waste a lot of space providing in-depth explanations and just rambling all over the place. You have to be concise about how your resume is written, and you have to choose the right format as well. If we're talking about dudes, when it comes there are a lot of different types of how would I say I would say setups for your resume. So the resume should feature your name, your contact information, your professional experience, education, at the very least, and if relevant, you're going to also want to include your certifications, your skills, anything volunteer work that may be relevant, what's good, and notable projects that you may have worked on. There are a lot of different things that you can put into your resume, but you want things concise and you want to have the right format to lay your resume out in the proper format. And I can tell you, there's a whole business to that as far as resumes are concerned. But Google Docs, Word, and some other processes really can help you really get started with resume formats, and people need to go to those resume formatting sites also to really take a look at how to format your resume. Google Docs is very good with that, especially for people who are kind of coming in as beginners. And I'm going to tell you another thing too, which people make tremendous mistakes on that people don't want to talk about, are spelling mistakes. Not editing your resume properly, things not being spelled right, and so forth. You see these mistakes in resumes at times, and there's no reason for that. So, brothers, and that's with all types of people. So, as far as we're concerned, you've got to be extremely on top of your game as far as that's concerned. So, you want to have a resume that's also error-free of spelling mistakes. All right, and run-on sentences and not proper grammatical use of like you have a comma where there should be a period and so forth. But yes, your spell check functionality has to be on point, and certainly certain tools like Grammarly and so forth like that. If those can download that and have that, that's very helpful in helping you to really write your resume. And then, of course, as I always say, when you do that, you should have somebody review it, somebody who is kind of knowledgeable. And if you can get someone to, some people may not have those kind of people around, but maybe a friend or someone else who can help go over that resume with you, and maybe you can research some of this online and look at it and kind of go over it together and see if that resume looks tight and concise and written properly with somebody else being there. And I would also say, be very honest. Make sure that you say what you can do. Don't come in there lying, because if you do, that can be checked. And then if let's say you have a skill set that's not there, and somebody questions you about it, and you're hama, you're going to get screwed. So you don't want to do things that are going to knock you out of the box. So you want to be frank about that, but you definitely don't want to be too wordy. And if I'm going on a little bit, I just have to say that because your resume is your first impression. That's the first thing they're going to look at. Can't be too wordy, just going all over the place, just rambling on. No, don't do that. Concise, quick, to the point. You don't need to include a picture. I don't know I don't know if you look at resumes at all, Mike, or you see people that come through. You don't. Some people have their picture up there, taking up a lot of space in the resume and so forth. No, you don't want to. You don't need to include that. No need for including your picture in there. And if you're going to do a cover letter, you do not, do not combine your resume and cover letter together because it's going to be too long, and people are just not going to look at long resumes. Remember, you have to make that impression quickly. You don't want this thing being a run on because people are not going to look at it for, I can't really get to the point here. Okay, next, and you're going to move on. You're not going to have a lot of time to look over long, wordy, 10-page resumes. And people do that way too much of that. And that's just a problem. So brothers have to be concise, to the point, not wordy, good format, be tight grammatically, really tight on point grammatically, and really be concise about what your background is. Then you can get right to the point, so people can see exactly where you are very quickly, and that tends to give the best, the best. How would I say the best acceptance? So people accept that a lot easier. There's a lot of resumes that are out there that are that's just not black folks. It's others that are just all over the place. Well, that hurts us. Go ahead.
Well, one of the strategies that has been brought up, since George Floyd in terms of recruiting candidates and removing bias has been removing people's first and last name.
Yes, I was going to get to that.
Right. So the more ethnic sounding names in the black community, more cultural sounding names, tend to not get called back. And so do you think that's a strategy that people should use, when applying for roles, or in the IT recruiter space, when you submit these sort of resumes over to clients, are we truncating, removing that that first name, last name, zip code, and things like that, personally identifiable information that would create the bias, or are we leaving that there?
No, we're gonna want to leave a lot of that there, because more so than anything else, a lot of what speaks to one getting into an area or getting into a company or getting an interview is what your background is, what skill set you have. There are going to be those who are going to say, if your name is Shaniqua, if you are, or if you're Daquan or something else like that. Some folks are going to look at that. Some are going to look at that negatively. Some are. But if you're Daquan from, if you're Daquan Washington, but yet, you have, but yet you're someone who is involved, let's say, with Linux, and you've got a strong Linux background. You've got some very good skill sets that are there, some good experience. And once I said, if you're looking and your resume is really built well for the position that you're looking to apply for, and those a lot of key relative keywords are in that resume, and your skill set as well, and it stands out. That's what's going to stand out. So, I understand there's certain levels of bias. Changing your names, and maybe if you do have another name or so forth, if you can change that's so. But I don't feel that people should be changing their names all over the place and doing that just to appeal to folks. I think the picture thing is unnecessary. Some people like to put the pictures on there and all that. Nope, don't do that. But certainly have a well-written resume with your best attributes standing out forward in a well-written, designed resume. It's going to get the most attention the quickest. Certain levels of discrimination, fortunately, we're not going to thoroughly be able to hide ourselves from. But that would be my best advice.
What about, there's a lot of people in the industry, black people in the industry, who are looking to make transitions into new roles of IT roles, but they pass that 40 plus mark, 45, 50. How much does ageism impact candidates when you're out there recruiting? Is there any sort of discrepancies in the person's age in the industry versus more entry level newer candidates?
Ageism has a little bit of a role, but it's funny because people are finding some of your older candidates, which we're seeing now. Some of your older candidates are coming in are mature. They're able to, they're responsible. They're able to handle their jobs pretty well. They're not sitting back complaining and doing whatever. And they're very responsible and they're hardworking and they're on top of it. So there's not as much, how would I say, discrimination, age discrimination, as I would say that there was in the past. That's tending to wane a little bit, which is rather interesting that we're seeing. So, but does ageism play a role? Depending on what companies yet you go to, ageism can play somewhat of a role, depending on the company you go to. Some of these young, new upstart, tech companies and so forth, that may play a role, even though legally they cannot discriminate against you by age. But that can play a role. Banks and some other places like that plays a less of a role. So, I'm just giving some examples. Manufacturing as well. So depending on some companies, but ageism, can play somewhat of a role. It can. So that's always something that can be in the mix that you may not be able to get around on. But is that a deal breaker? Absolutely not. For people who are going to change and coming into a technical role, and let's say that they're coming in on the networking side now, help desk or however, and they're coming in and they've got some good certifications, as well as they're coming over from one role. You see they're making somewhat of a career change. They're going to pay them less money potentially than somebody who'd be at a more senior role if they're coming in new for that role. You have to understand that. But some people are welcome to see that because they look at some mature workers now, since we've seen some of the youngers and millennials and some of the Z's and some of them coming in, and some of them are not as motivated in some ways. Some of the older workers have a slightly different work ethic. There's a slight difference there. There is. That's being looked upon positively. So to speak about that negatively, I can't. To say that ageism doesn't exist, that would be not entirely accurate. That there will be some, but is it something that is going to totally affect you negatively and keep you out of the business? No. Or keep you from making a transition? No, it will not.
Okay. Pivoting back to skill set question. Where do you see things like AI, cloud computing, machine learning coming in? Are any of those coming across your radar?
Yeah, all the time. That's the wave. That's the wave of where things are going. AI is big. Cloud computing, as we say, it's big. A lot of the stuff that I'm currently dealing with, it really is dealing with a lot of systems architecture, development, and so forth. I'm dealing with a lot of developers, front end, back end people, and so forth. Microservices and that type. But as far as AI is concerned, machine learning and so forth, with some of the engineering companies and stuff that we've been dealing with as well, absolutely, absolutely, that is huge. That's where things are. That's going to continue on, and that's going to consistently grow. That's where things are moving rapidly, and that is just that's going to be going on for the foreseeable future. So yeah, Mike. I don't know how else to really answer that, except that's big, and that's going to continue to grow.
Okay. Last but not least, what advice would you give to candidates that are transitioning into the industry at the entry level, who are not technical, but want to get into a more technical role?
I would say, if you want to get into a more technical role, and they're leaving one role, and you're saying that now they're coming into to get into technology and move into a technology role now.
Yeah, they
From
used to work at Walmart. They used to work in retail. They want to get into a more. They want to get into the IT industry. What advice would you give them to get into a more technical role?
I would definitely say, well, where do if you want to get into the technology, you just want to, well, I just want to get into technology. Well, where do you want to get? You want to get into help desk? How do you want to enter in? You want to get in more development? You have to ask yourself that question, see where you really want to kind of begin to get into. And without question, there are a lot of excellent online courses that one can begin to get into. Some start out free, then others you can actually get into and pay for them as well, which are not that expensive to really get in and start getting certified. And to get certified in some of these courses are not that expensive. They really are not that. The cost of entry is relatively low, and you can go to community colleges that actually have very low cost courses and so forth. There are so many ways to get in. My view is to first get in and start to look to get into some baseline certifications. I was dealing with someone through the Brain Trust where he wanted to really get into Python development, and we got him entered into a basic Python certification class. We went through the various phases courses for Python development, and it was not that cost expensive, and he had to put his time in to actually learn, and he started to really evolve nicely there, and he's segueing into the business now. It took him about a year, but he took his time doing it. But here he was coming out of driving a truck, then moving into IT, getting into IT development. He became of a Python developer. He started to get involved with some of the basic certification courses. So there's a lot of online stuff that you can take a look at. But first, look at it and study up on this. And the transition is not that difficult. It really isn't once you start to do your research and start to look to get certified, or really start to learn some of the basics of what you might be looking. If you want to get in help desk, which is very entry level, look at help desk. Look at various courses that you can start to get in on help desk, which is a very easy ground floor level to get into. You can learn it relatively quick and start your IT career literally from there. And you can come out of a field that is totally outside of technology, totally outside of it, and get into this field that way. And it's really not that difficult. It just will take you some time to just to do some study and put a little time to start to learn, and then we'll see if it's really for you, and if it is, you can go further up that ladder. But that's what I would suggest. Just starting to get into it. Also, speak to other people that you can find online and others. There are a lot of other groups that you can look at. Start to talk with people and just start to inquire about these fields. And yes, you can, look because there are online. I would say not only online courses, but there are groups that you can talk with. Also in Facebook, I know people utilize Facebook, and there are actually IT user groups there that you can actually start to encounter people there as well. .NET, help desk, a lot of different groups that you can start to inquire and start to actually have conversations with people from that perspective, just to get an idea. as to what's going on, and who to talk with to help, maybe partner up with you to help you kind of move through that phase of introduction and kind of transitioning into it even easier. But that's what I would have to say.
But if you're an IT recruiter and you're having this candidate that does not have a technical background in it, and you're saying, okay, go study up on Python, study up on Java, C++, SQL, whatever. How do you submit that person to a potential client? Because they don't have the traditional background, and the client is saying, hey, we need, for entry level, we need 5 years of experience. How do you submit them?
Well, for somebody who needs 5 years experience in the industry, they're going to have 5 years experience. But what you want to do is, if you want to have people who can really start to get in, what we've seen and what I've been doing, and over the last 2 to 3 years, we have internship programs where people can come in and do internships for various groups and companies, where the only thing that they really would like to have people actually come in with is just a desire to learn, where they're not going to know anything, and they can actually get paid a dollar per hour basis. We're dealing with some college kids with that currently, that we deal with. But for other people, you have companies that do have internships as well, where they can take people who've worked, but yet they want to do an internship with a company to come in, learn help desk, or learn, let's say Java or so forth. Work with the development team. You have to apply for it. You don't have to have really any serious experience at all, and come in and start to learn from that perspective. And you'll start to have the scrum meetings and so forth, and you'll sit down and you'll start to learn how to actually how to do a lot of this stuff. But it comes down to just getting exposed. But if somebody is looking for a senior level development job, or somebody who's 5 year experience for Java, and you want to get in and become a Java developer, and you want to get in on a 5 year level, and you don't have the experience, you're not going to get that. So that's not going to happen for you. But just getting in at the ground level, and just doing an internship where you're getting paid a small amount of money to learn. Those are great ways of actually getting into an industry and learning the. Anyway, go ahead, Mike.
No. I guess what I was trying to say really was that you have a client, State Street Bank, BNY, yep, whatever it is, and they say, well, we want an entry level person, but they also got to have X amount of experience. Well, if you have a non-traditional candidate that's coming in, and you say, go study the Python, go study the C++, Java, SQL. Well, how do you submit that candidate without that background, but did all of that necessary work? How does that translate to the client at BNY who says, I'm looking for entry level, but they got to have this much experience? Well, where are they going to get the experience from if they don't get in?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I'm not really running into that a lot of where they need to have, a certain level of experience to get into a position where they're coming in entry level. Most of the people, just like we were doing a project with the company called Power School, they were looking for, let's say we were looking for Java. We were looking for Java developers. We were looking for really entry-level Java people. They didn't have what they really wanted, were people who were coming in who maybe worked, had a job before, but didn't have any experience in the IT industry. But what they wanted, people who had a lot of desire to learn, and had somewhat of a work background where they could be seen, where they had good experience, maybe working at another job for a while and got some good references. Yet these people were very hungry to learn IT, and they brought them in that way. Um, they just wanted people who had a desire to learn. They didn't have to have really any experience. They were going to learn experience that they were in there. So that's what I've been running into a lot of. I haven't been running into a lot of, situations where they want people to say to come in at a tech level but have 5 years of experience or something else. I'm not really encountering that, Mike. I'm not really.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to maybe give a better example, because I just know that the stuff that we're doing with bringing in younger workers and so forth who are just getting into IT, they don't have to have a very strong IT background at all. They may want to have them coming out of school or having a certain GPA or something else like that they may want a certain qualifier. But as far as just coming in at entry level, they don't need a lot of experience. They don't have to have a lot of experience. But then again, they're not also going to get paid a 6-figure salary or anything like that just coming in at that level either. So people have to understand that too. But
nope, that's fair enough. That's all the questions I have. Thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button on the way out. Share the video if possible and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust.